Welcome to the Spark Hot Seat series, where we dig into the real, raw journey of founding and scaling a business with a co-founder. Get ready for the good, the bad, and the brutally honest truth about business relationships. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spark Hot Seat. Today we have a great international CEO and founder, Bartek Ogonowski. He joined us from London, so that's why we're doing a video, because it's hard sometimes to see where we can be at the same time, same place. He's the co-founder and CEO of Levra. He's a visionary leader focused on bridging the human skills gap with innovative learning and virtual coaching. An Oxford MBA and top 35 under 35 honoree. We're very happy to have you here. So I would love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Firstly, thank you very much. It's great to be part of this amazing production and show, and always good to meet interesting new people and share my story. As you can hear, my accent is South African, or hopefully you can hear it, and I haven't lost it. But I was born and grew up in South Africa. I do come from a very diverse and interesting background, where my father grew up in Poland, hence the name Bartek Ogonowski, which is very, very Polish.
Yeah.
And my mother grew up in South Africa, but she's got roots from Lebanon. So it's quite an interesting mix of culture and diversity.
Very fun.
Very fun, yeah. Very best of both worlds. And now I find myself living in London and living the entrepreneurial startup dream, as they say. So very keen to be here and talk more about it.
I feel like we could start with the difference between entrepreneurship in, let's say, London, Cape Town, and I'm assuming you have also traveled in this side of the world. Have you seen many differences between these entrepreneurship worlds?
There's probably two ways to look at it. It's one, like the actual entrepreneur, it's themselves, which I don't think it matters where you are. It's the spirit that matters as an entrepreneur. The place of entrepreneurship, or the actual culture of entrepreneurship, does change quite a lot. And I have seen that. The reason why we started in London as an option, as opposed to back to South Africa, was because the access to funding was probably a bit better. The entrepreneurship community was a bit more advanced. There's a lot more networking events, etc. But if you compare London and Europe compared to in America, it's also very different and a completely different pace. Where America is very much bigger rounds, much more transactional, get stuff done quicker, decision-making processes happen on the spot. And I guess London and Europe is a bit more conservative in the approach of fundraising and scale.
Yeah, no, I have seen that definitely. I've traveled a bit. I've been a consultant in technology for most of my career. And I've always loved going to entrepreneurship events, even if I wasn't quote unquote an entrepreneur at the time. The relationships between entrepreneurs and corporations also is a little bit conservative, more conservative in Europe than in the US. As you said, transactions happen faster, even connections happening a little bit more natural or faster. People are much more direct, I would say, to go to business and talk about it. Whereas even as a Latina, I think you have more of that smoosh in Latin America and Europe. You have to have conversations that are even more personal before getting into business. So it's curious that you have the same point of view.
Yeah, interesting.
And with that, I want to ask you then, how did Levra started? Where did that come from?
I spent about 7 years of my career at Deloitte in South Africa, similar to probably what you would have had in a big corporate. I was in the auditing and assurance department, and a very risk-averse career. I spent 7 years in effectively managing risk. It was there, though, that Levra started, or the idea of Levra started, because often I would see a lot of technically and academically intelligent people that were leaving university and starting at a Deloitte for their first jobs. They knew all the theory behind the accounting rules, but they didn't know how to speak to clients. They didn't know how to present in front of audiences. Their soft skills were extremely bad or lacking, and not for any fault of their own, but they had just never been taught on these skills. And in fact, in a post-COVID world, when that was like in 2020, 2021, they had never had the opportunity to learn from other people. So I started thinking, what can I do to make a difference, to actually help this problem that I'm seeing myself? I would often get calls from clients that were phoning me up and saying, Bartek, get that person out of my office. They're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. But they were wrong because they knew what they were talking about and they were intelligent. They'd just never been given the skills to actually be better at these human skills. So
so it's funny because I'll interrupt you here a little bit.
Sure.
My perspective was very similar. I used to work at IBM, and I've worked in my corporate life very similar to you, consulting, not in audit, but in technology, which is similar, if you would say, profile in terms of they're a little bit more introverted, extremely smart and sharp people, but very hard for them to communicate what they really think in a way that people, I would say, normal people could understand it. And this is what I always say to them. If your grandmother doesn't understand what you do or the concept that you're trying to communicate, most people won't. So try to convey that it's an actual problem that I've seen, especially now with so many emerging technologies. People are trying to make CEOs, even the chief digital officers, understand what that technology does and what is it really, how is it helpful? How am I going to use this technology to impact my users or impact my business? And for most people, it's a very hard task to do.
Absolutely. And I think, of course, it's the getting your message across in the right way, but also it's the ability to form relationships in the workplace and have good good teams, good networks. Without forming that initial element of trust, you're not going to have work colleagues that you get along with. That impacts your culture. That impacts so many other things which we'll get on. So the ability to be better at soft skills, or what we call human skills, is definitely of the utmost importance. So after seeing this problem, and probably important to note that I come from a family of medical doctors, so my whole mindset was always about how can I make a difference? How can I try to do something tangible in people's lives? I left the corporate world, and following a short stint in a startup in South Africa, which I'm sure we can get on in a bit, because that gave me the hunger of entrepreneurship, I went on to study an MBA at the University of Oxford. And it was here that I met my co-founder, Emily. And during the MBA, we had the opportunity to do something called the Entrepreneurship Project, where you can come up with any idea and almost get professors to stress test it, put together slide decks, financial projections, etc., almost like a mini accelerator. And it was the first night of launch where we were launching the project, and I went on stage and I pitched my idea, like, this is what I want to do, who wants to join? And Emily joined straight away. She's like, I'm very keen, I'm a coach, I love this problem, and I want to help solve it. And that's where Levra was born. And maybe
so you found your co-founder at your business class.
Yeah, didn't know her before. There's an element of serendipity in there. There's an element of luck. I had deferred my MBA from the year before because COVID had hit. And if I had gone on to do it, who knows where Levra or we would have been. So sometimes you look back at those critical decisions and realize that they were important. And maybe last point about Levra, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of other questions, but the word Levra comes from the Latin word lever, which means to uplift or elevate. And that's exactly what our mission is. We're really trying to help people build up their confidence, build up that human element of you, so that you can make a first good impression. You can, walk into a room and present properly, or know how to network more effectively, and gets you ahead, and you become a much more effective and valuable asset in your organization, effectively.
I love the name too.
Thank you.
So most of, my friends entrepreneurs, and now that I'm building a community of founders, a lot of them have met in school. So we know that's a great, let's say, campus community to build those relationships that potentially will be your co-founder, business partner, anything really, or best friend for your wedding. But one thing that we found is, especially in like college, if you're both starting business, your skill sets are going to be potentially very similar. So for you to have a person that will add more value in complementing skills is hard. I would say in your situation, it's a little different because MBAs will bring people from different skill sets that want to study a little bit more or get deeper into business to launch something new, change their career, or even start something. So I think that's a very rare place where your network's extremely valuable for you to start a business. But I'm curious to see which skill sets do you see in your now co-founder that you were like, wow, this is really something that I was lacking to launch, like that company that I'm dreaming of.
We had the benefit of knowing each other on like a friendly basis before. So we had, we had shared like dinners with bigger groups. We had gone for coffees and spoken about who we are, and like similar to like MBA networking as you do, strangers. And then when this idea came up, there was already an element of like trust and friendliness between us. And because we had those 3-4 months of like working together on a project, which was a very safe place, we got to know each other's work ethic and work styles, as opposed to saying, oh, I need you because you've got the legal skills and I don't. It was more about, can we actually form a working relationship together? And no matter how hard it gets, I can rely on you and you can rely on me. So I think it became more about each other and who we are as people, and like, can I rely on this person? Can I trust them? As opposed to skill sets. In hindsight, and when we started, that helped a lot because I came from an accounting background. She came from a legal background. And two of the most difficult things with startups is getting the legalities right, is getting the accounting right. And of course, there's the element of technology, which we were missing, but we've employed that and we've brought that into the business. So it was more about, people often say co-founders or co-founding a company is like a marriage.
Yes,
and you hear that.
We say that a lot too here.
They say that a lot. And it is because you spend in so many hours together. You spend in trips, train trips, travel, early mornings, late nights, frustrations, wins, losses, people saying no, people saying yes. And you've got to get each other out that, you're all going to go up and down. And it's your responsibility as a co-founder to pull your co-founder up when they're down, and their responsibility to pull you up when you're down. And that's that whole element of like marriage.
I love that you acknowledge that you do have something that you complement each other, which is the legal and accounting part, which it truly is some of the most complicated part of this. Is when we put in operations, sometimes it can make or break a business. So having a true partner that could collaborate, even if it's not your co-founder, but you can employ an agency that understands it for actual startups. And we created in Spark Founders a whole marketplace where we are curating companies that are serving startups because we see that it's such a pain point. I've worked in, as we said, corporations before, and my entrepreneur friends were always like, I need a CRM. And I'm like, well, I work with Salesforce for big corporations, but I don't think Salesforce will do for you what it does for a big corporation. So now we're trying to figure out which of those companies really serve them. So then they can focus on that vision and that company and not the operations side of it. One thing that you mentioned, you got along very well. You were friends before, but it always, even with friends and people that there's points of contention. So I'm curious to see what was the first disagreement that you were like, oof, this is rough. How do we make sure we fix this? Or even how did you come up out of it? Because sometimes we even think, oh, no, this could be the end of it.
Yeah, there's no sort of big fights that spring to mind. It's good to have healthy debates and healthy disagreements. Yes. What we're very good at and what we often push each other on is that we both have the same core values and we both have the same mission for why Levra exists. And that is foundational. That is like the strong foundation of our co-founding relationship, that no matter how hard it gets, or even if we're going to disagree on certain things, we kind of remind ourselves, okay, is this aligned with the future mission or not? And I think it's a good sort of bringing back to earth when we're having these debates. So it's good that we often are challenging each other, or we're giving each other like objective facts that happened and how we could do better in certain ways. And we always just remind ourselves of those values. But definitely very pleased with the choice of co-founding together. And I think it's also great to get the diversity of like a male and a female, different thoughts, different perspectives. And we also, in every business or most successful startups, you see that if there's two co-founders, one is more of like the personality type of like a dreamer and the visionary, and one is more like the person that's riding the ship and keeping things going. And both are so like equally important. And Emily and I definitely play that role, where I'm more of like visionary, dreamer, where we're going, business development, partnerships, etc. And she's more like, this is what needs to be done, and this is how we have to keep the business going today, and like operating on more of like the operations side. And that's so key, because that's to our strengths, and that's what we enjoy doing. And if you take any of those out, the business kind of falls apart a bit. So we definitely rely on each other in many aspects.
Yes, definitely. I think the more I talk with co-founders, the more I hear this type of pattern where your certain personality, however you want to call it, there's different personality tests out there, but then there's some that are, you said, big picture, and then the other ones are, let's do this, task oriented. And I dig to get along super well, because also they love doing that. That's their personality. So it's not that it's like a homework for them, like, oh, now I need to go and do it. Like, no, you have that one person that loves making things going on paper and making it happen, and the other person loves to think big. My co-founder and I, also male and female, being a woman or a man, do have certain traits that come with it. And it's funny because we see things differently, and I love that we can have those debates. As you said, it's not a fight. I use the word fight because it triggers sometimes people. It's like, oh, we had a big fight one time, and we fixed it because we went for drinks, and that's how the way that we fix, when we have a big fight. But I think more and more, when you have a mature relationship, no matter what type of relationship it is, before that trigger something, you discuss it in a very healthy way. So now we have executive meetings every week where we discuss everything from the cadence, if you couldn't respond, or to, how can we solve this problem together? Do you take it on? Do I take it on? I wonder which maybe ceremonies or things have you put in place in your relationship with Emily to, really talk about these topics, debate healthy, and kind of fix issues that potentially, because, startups always come up with surprises. So then you can actually have a great, healthy relationship.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I guess as you mature as a startup, there needs to be a bit more structure in place. The first few months are very scatty, and you're all over, and you don't have any like revenue yet, you don't have any investment, so you kind of just like throw in the net as far as you can. What we've done now and over the past few months is that every Monday morning, typically from about 9 to 11, there'll be a team strategy meeting where it'll be, there's 4 full-time people in the company and 4 part-time, so it's mainly just the full-time people. And we have a weekly strategy meeting. What are the main tasks? What are the goals for the week? Where's everyone going? What are some of the big things that are happening this week? Let's look at last week's agenda. Have we completed those tasks? If not, why not? So accountability, visibility, everyone knows what everyone's doing. Because when the week starts happening with meetings and running around, you're not all going to be sat in the office together at all times. It's all over. So that Monday morning is like our structure. And now we're getting better at trying not to put meetings on a Monday. External meetings, I'm saying.
Oh my God, I love that. I say this to a lot, like in corporations or not, the Monday is kind of that day that you really want to kind of evaluate, analyze what's coming to the week, and then you can start being a doer. So I'm curious to see your point of view of why not meetings on Mondays.
Yeah, well, that's why. So Monday we usually have that like morning, and it usually runs till like 12 and up until lunch even. And in the afternoon, I always block my calendar on a Monday for customer outreach and follow-ups from like the previous few days. It's a good time to get follow-ups. It's a good time to get our pipe drive updated. That's the CRM that we use. Sorry, not even a marketing tool, but
no, I love it because I was just talking about CRM, so it closed up that loop. Like, this is one that is very good in London.
But Mondays is like you get your organization done, you follow up for the week, and then from like Tuesday to Friday, it's just especially in my days, it's very manic. It's like client meetings, it's demos, it's flying to Dublin for our client, it's doing podcasts like this, which is amazing. Monday is like team strategy, follow up on meetings, eat healthy, and then the rest of the week is just like crazy. But going back to the question, the thing with my co-founder that we've put in is once every 2 weeks on a Wednesday afternoon, we've also blocked an hour session, and in that hour, it's an informal catch-up. For example, we had it yesterday, and we had an investor event that we had to attend, which was in the evening. But before then, we met in a pub, as an example, and we had a drink.
Nice.
And we just caught up, like, how are you? Are you like, what's going on? We'll talk about this in a bit, but my co-founder is pregnant with her second child. And
Congratulations to Emily.
yeah, no, thank you. And I'll pass that on. And her first child was born a few months into the startup too. So we've also had to navigate, a baby, and she had to do a lot of that. So we sit down on that Wednesday. How are you? How's the pregnancy? How's your husband? How's this? How's your partner? Like everything, just get into grips with that. And if there's anything that needs to be said, we would rather just say it then. It's in a relaxed environment. It's in person. Because we have had instances in the past where we say things off the bat, like after a meeting, you shouldn't have done that, or you shouldn't have done this, and it's not the right time. You need to digest, you need to think about it. And that Wednesday is really like an open session where we have the best interest for each other. Are we okay? Like, what's going on? How are you sleeping? How are you getting along? What could we do better? Are we treating our employees properly? Are they happy? And I think we both care a lot about humans and people. So maybe often overanalyze meetings or comments and stuff, but that Wednesday time is important. And then also healthy boundaries. I mean, like Emily in her diary has got every day from 5 p.m. to 6:30 or 7, like time with Etta, who's her baby. And we won't obviously set meetings in that time unless there's like an investor event or like an event which she chooses to go to. So it's also about having those. So we use our diary very, very open.
Yes.
We've got Google Meets where like everything, even if there's like a event or friend's birthday or something, or doctor or whatever, we'll put it there. So like there's nothing to hide. This is what I do. And
I think this is something very valuable that I hear from a lot of my entrepreneur friends, especially the first timers. They think that they don't deserve free time or time with their family members and their friends, and it's so hard for them to say, they feel like they're wasting their time. And I have to tell them, no, that's part of your life. Entrepreneurship and your business is just one part of everything else happening in your life. So treat your life as is your business too. Just put it in your calendar. So I love that what you're saying, diary in London, calendar here. But put even the small things like going to the dentist or calling your mom, put it there. Otherwise, you're not going to have time for it. Because time is the most precious thing right now. It's like, how do you become the most efficient? And most of the very successful entrepreneurs know how to, the lazy, successful person, really, it's like, how can I do most of my time and create the most impact in very little time? So it's not that I'm busy all the time and I'm doing stuff, but at the end of the day, you're like, but you're not even creating revenue. So what are you doing being busy all this time? So you just need to evaluate what is actually impactful and put it in your calendar, what brings you joy as a person, as an entrepreneur, and map it out. So I love what I learned from this part of the conversation is time everything out, put it in your calendar. So then no one can really say, well, I saw this time between 4 to 5 in the morning that you weren't doing anything. So I put a calendar invite.
Well, sometimes we are up at that time. I mean,
if you really want to, like that will be a great time for you, especially if you're in London and you want to, work with another part of the world. But what I'm saying is you need to block the time. So I'm a night owl. I could have conversations at 1 in the morning. Doesn't affect me. But if you want me to go at 5 in the morning anywhere, I'm sorry, you just lost me. Like you have to really motivate me. Like, let's do bungee jumping or something. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll go at 5 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also about playing to your strengths, and I think we've only got better at this more recently. I mean, the first few months there's no structure. I mean, this structure's only been put in place in the last maybe 6-7 months, which is good. But that first year is very difficult to put it in place because it's like, it's stress and it's not sleeping and stuff. But also now realizing that when are you the most effective? And Stephen Bartlett spoke about this in a recent podcast. He's got the podcast Diary of a CEO. It's a brilliant podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember which one it was, but he says, like, I'm the most productive when I wake up in the morning, I do my gym, I get my stuff done, I make my breakfast, and then I'm like from 10 or 11, I'm like fully in, and I can do whatever you want me to do. Because I've done my stuff and I'm like ready. And of course, not always all of us have the luxury of like pushing the day to 10 or 11, but he probably works till like 12, 1, 2 o'clock at night. And similar to myself, I'm a night owl. Like, I often do my best, most productive thinking at night when everyone's quiet. I'm like by myself in my apartment and thinking following up or doing things that I need to do, and often from like 10:30, 11 p.m. till 1:30 a.m. I'm just banging away like this work and in a very very big flow state. So it's also about finding when works best. Whereas Emily, on the other hand, is more of an early person, and she much prefers waking up early and doing a few odds and ends, and starting the day earlier and sleeping earlier. I think she's in bed by like 9 or 10.
And actually, couples too. A lot of the times, the romantic couples, have the night owl and the early bird. And I'm seeing also something similar in business partnerships, because also my business partner is an early bird and I'm a night owl. And we just need to figure out what is that time of the day that we intersect and we can work together, or we can communicate. How do we communicate? It's also something that we have find that we need to discuss from the beginning. Like, I'm a big WhatsApp girl. As a Latin and international person, I use WhatsApp. Most Americans use SMS. And most people in business love emails. I do not like email. I prefer WhatsApp, and I prefer other ways of communicating, even if it's just in person or a meeting or a Google Meet, than an email. So we just need to communicate it, because if you're sending me emails for everything and I don't reply in the whole day, he's going to feel offended for some, and then I'm going to tell them that's not the way that I would like to communicate. You're going to learn from that, from going and working with each other. But I think having those conversations early on really help out.
Yeah, absolutely. And being open about it. Like, if you've taken the risk, if you've taken the initiative and that growth mindset to start a business, do it in a time that makes sense to you. I mean, you are accountable to yourself as well as your co-founder, but do what's best for you. Like, don't do things that aren't going to work for you. Do you know what I mean? If there's certain ways that you prefer working, then do it, because there's always there's strategies and ways to do things. But most people that have broken away from a corporate or fixed lifestyle have broken away because they do have this like sense of liberation and freedom. If I want to work till 2-3 in the morning and sleep in a bit longer, I'll do that, because that's when I maybe work better. Do you know what I mean? So it's
I agree. I think sometimes when we come from corporate, we think we need to replicate what happens in the corporation. And actually, this is the one opportunity you have to not do that. Just do whatever you feel like is right for your people, your community, yourself, and the company, how it works. For example, I live in Miami and I don't own a car. I've never have, actually. I've always worked in cities. Like, I used to be in New York City, Holland, places where you bike or go, it's my preference. I don't see it as a need. And, it has worked for me. I more than 4 years here in Miami, and I can go anywhere at any point, and I don't really miss having a car.
Yeah. And if you break down your week, and again, I don't think we've got this right yet at all, but it definitely feels a lot better in the last few months. If you put that set time and that structure, and as you said correctly earlier, your diary you almost become wedded to your diary. Like, if you've got a meeting at 10 to 11, you will make sure you're on that meeting. You're not going to just not go. So if you start putting gym in your diary, like, are you going to start going more? Probably. So in a way, it's a bit sad that you've got to rely on a diary, but if you are wedded to your diary, then use it, and use it in a way that actually makes sense. And not only for meetings, because there's some days where I look at my diary and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I actually going to do all these meetings today? I've got like 15 in a row.
Oh my God, Yes, I remember when COVID happened, we were kind of used to it because I worked in technology most of my career. So we actually were used to having a hybrid way of working. And most of us have our laptop, travel all the time. But somehow my calendar was just back-to-back meetings since I wake up to go to sleep. It was insane. I've never seen the quantity. And I remember I had to at least block 15 minutes to go to the bathroom. Like, I was like, I need a break. I need, we go, okay, guys, I need a bio break, and like, wait for me for 5 minutes, and I go and come back. Otherwise, there was literally no time to stand up, because people forgot that when you have in-person meetings, you always have time to go there. You walk there, you do something, you go to the cafeteria, take a coffee, and because you see the person, it doesn't feel like they're missing out on something, that they're late, But now with these online meetings, you do need to put that break into it. Otherwise, you're not going to have any breaks.
Yeah. I was having this discussion last week with a potential partnership of ours, and exactly that point came up, during COVID, and COVID was a unusual and terrible time.
Right.
I like some people liked it for some reason, but I just felt very locked up and it was a strange. But from a diary perspective, because there wasn't any other expectation, like all you had to do was be on those meetings, right? You couldn't go out your house, and
Mm.
a lot of people were stuck in small places, whatever. So now you've had people got built into that mentality that you do have those meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings, but now real life means that you've got real life things to do again, and now you're trying to do both, and that's where we've seen an
Mm.
increase of mental health issues and anxiety and
Oh
like
yeah.
people being too stressed out and having heart attacks and all these things because now you're trying to do a million things and it's just not going to work.
No, I agree completely. I think we need to reevaluate. I the more I have meetings, in consulting, that's all we do is presentations and meetings, and especially
Yeah.
online if you have a team that is global. But I always ask, what is the outcome that we want to create out of this meeting? You know, is anything going to change after this meeting? If not,
Hmm.
then first of all, it could be a WhatsApp because I don't want another email either. So I'm a big advocate for working sessions or workshops where everyone
Hmm.
has to come in with something, pre-work, homework, study something, whatever it is. And then the decision makers are actually in the room to make a decision and get an outcome out of that meeting. But if it's just to a report or anything like that, what is it that we're actually doing? I feel like we're just losing our time. Now that we're entrepreneurs, we have the power to put that cadence and put those kind of frameworks into place where it works for
Hmm.
everyone. And it's harder when we start scaling, but it's also something that you have to define as a
Hmm.
founding team. I wonder, have you had that conversation with Emily of like, what's the vision for Levra? Like, how do you want to scale it? Or even have the conversation of if you guys exit or you want to have this company forever.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very important discussion or vision to set from the beginning. You've kind of
Mm-hmm.
got to know, like, what are we trying to do with this? Like, not only what is the mission of the company, like why does the company exist, but also where we're going, like commercially, financially, etc. We both revisit this conversation a lot too, but there's definitely so we want Lever to be a sustainable company in terms of like growth and where it gets to eventually, but we are also aiming towards an exit in the next 4 or 5 years. We've got a plan to get there. We know how we're going to get there. We know what it's going to take to get there. What that means is that
Mm-hmm.
Lever doesn't dissipate as a company, but hopefully it gets acquired by a bigger organization which can take it to even new heights and new technology and new whatever the case may be. So that is our goal, and that is also a reason that also a big factor as to a deciding factor as to doing the startup. So we know we've got our numbers in mind. We know what we need to get to, and even from like an investor perspective, we set out this journey like milestones and where we need to achieve and what we need to get to, and that's where we're going. So yeah, exit in 4 or 5 years, and hopefully for the number we have in mind, which will give us a healthy exit and hopefully some time to do more fun activities.
More of that other side of the calendar, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Fill up with more joy. A lot of the times, co-founders start like 1-2 years into the organization, and then when they have these conversations very late in the process, they
Mm,
realize they don't want the same things. And
yeah.
it's interesting that they've never had those conversations. So I always encourage my entrepreneurs to have very tough conversations in the beginning. It really is just me as a potential co-founder. These are my expectations for a company. This is what I would love to do. This is what I would love to use that money for. And really be the most honest you can be in terms of your expectations with the company and your time.
Mm,
And I think that will
absolutely.
really make you align of like how can you make those, your expectations, Emily's expectations in one and work together. Well,
Absolutely.
Bartek, thank you so much for your time. I know it's getting late now in London, but thank you so much. This was a wealth of information. We shouldn't have limits now on when do we connect as people. Like if I want to have a co-founder from London or Cape Town or Miami, Colombia, or Australia, like we shouldn't have those limitations or blockers right now. We're a global economy. I think we should have been able to have not just these conversations, but being able to connect and work together. So I love that this is a trigger for potentially people seeing how it's so easy to bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I think a big thing maybe just to on that point of like a global economy or globalization, put yourself out there. You know, you never know where it's going to land you. And be curious, and like if you want to do something or if you want to go start a business, you know, in my case, it was literally going on stage and speaking about the idea I wanted to do. And Emily heard it, and we joined as co-founders and met and started a company. Go find that stage, whatever it may be, whether that's on a social platform or some sort of program like Spark Founders. But go find that platform, get on the stage, speak about it, and you've got to often put yourself out there to get the luck and serendipity that comes with it.
Yes, completely. I think people really need to, whatever it is that you're comfortable with, if you want to do, you know, online speed networking, or if you want to do an event where you are, or you just want to start putting your presentations online for people to see it, someone could find it. I feel like there's so many ways to get feedback and also get people to collaborate with you. I'm surprised how many folks are just willing to give you mentorship for free, really, or just they want to collaborate with you because they already done it. It was hard for them. They don't want the same for you, and they really just want people to succeed. So it's crazy in a good way how many good people are out there that are super smart and willing to help you out.
Absolutely. So it's a powerful thing about the entrepreneurship community. People are more often willing to help you out than you expect, and it's not like a corporate world where, you know, everyone's climbing to the top. Everyone's doing very different things in entrepreneurship. You know how hard it is. It's very tough to start a business, and everyone who's been there will give you the time because they also got the time from someone else. So always pay it forward in that entrepreneurship world, and it's a very powerful tool.
Wise words, pay it forward. And with that, we finish this episode. Thank you so much, Bartek. And, you know, we hope we can see each other in person at some point soon.